Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the all-roll tier list for patch 10.2. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Check out the rest of the content as well. I did a more in-depth support tier list a couple of days ago, and I also did an in-depth patch notes analysis. So be sure to look at that. And then we also stream every night starting around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We usually go till about 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. It's a wonderful, very chill, friendly community. I try to be as informative as I can while I'm playing, explaining what I'm doing, while also checking out the chat, answering any questions that you might have. So come by, check it out. It's on YouTube, and hope to see you out there. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So as usual, this Google Doc will be linked in the description if you want a really quick cheat sheet. If you want to speed the video up, you can always click on the little settings button, the little cog, and turn it up to 1.5 speed. You probably understand most of what's going on, because I am going to be trying to cover 25 different champions, so it might take a little bit. I also have timestamps in the description if you want to jump around your favorite parts as well, if that helps you out. Okay, let's go ahead and get going here. So the support, I'm just going to hit on these just really fast, just because we have an entirely separate tier list for that, like I mentioned, and we'll spend more time on the other roles. But I do think that Rakan is number one overall right now, and it's not just like that I do well on Rakan versus other champions. That is true. I have been doing pretty well on Rakan so far this season. But just overall, he's just positioned to be the most versatile champion, depending on a whole bunch of different game states that are going on right now. And this is both, I mean, he's really good in pro, but he's also pretty good in solo queue, and I would say even at lower brackets of play he's good. So he's got a 100% win rate right now in pro on patch 10.1. Now he's only been played 8 times, which is not like an insane amount, but I mean, it's still 8 times he's been played, and he's been banned 7. So pretty decent win rate overall. What makes Rakan really good, and I don't have the link to his, I guess I can just pull it up here real quick, is his versatility. So I get asked all the time, why Rakan this, why Rakan that? Because the thing is, in solo queue, you're not really sure what you're going to get most of the time. Sometimes your AD carry is doing well, not often if you're me, or sometimes other supports. It feels like AD carry is one of the most underpowered roles, with the exception of like maybe the top 2, like the Misfortune and the Aphelios. We'll talk about that here in a second. But that allows him to play around the AD carry if you want to do that, but then you can also play around like your mid laner, your top laner, your jungler. You just have so many different styles of play that you can do, whether it's engage, whether it's peel, and you have a lot of different utility items that you can get for different situations, like Ardent Sensor to double down if your AD carry is doing really well, or you can do a Shirelia's if you have a bruiser that's doing really well, like a Set or an Olaf or a Darius. If you have a team fight comp, you got like a Jarvan and a Rumble or something like that, you can go for Redemption to contribute in that way. If they have a bunch of auto attackers and you're the primary engage and you're going to be getting hit a lot, you can get something like Frozen Heart to even get more armor than Zeke's that you'll typically get. If they have a bunch of CC on their team, you could even get like a Mikhail's as a second item. So just so many different things you can do with him that make him really versatile. And one of the big things too is that he not only has one of the premier engages in the game, which is his ult plus his W, but he can also get out. So when he goes in, if your team doesn't follow up or they're really slow or, you know, whatever, you can always get back out with Battle Dance. Often you can. I mean, they have to be, either you or they have to be really, really far out of position for you to not be able to Battle Dance back over to them. So, that just gives him, he's one of the only supports that can go in, engage, and get out in the same motion. Everyone else, if it's Leona, Nautilus, Thresh, if they go in, they're staying in most of the time. It's very difficult to get back out. Versus Rakan can disengage, which is nice. And he has AP ratios. That's huge. Like, good AP ratios, because Battle Dance is a 0.8 per shield, and you can apply this twice. This is a 280 shield. With a total of a 1.6 AP ratio. So because he has good AP ratios, particularly on his shield and his passive, that means that he can get things like Ardent Sensor, like Athene's Unholy Grail. If you want to get those, that's on the table. Versus, you know, with someone like a Leona or a Nautilus, it's going to be almost impossible for you to get those items. So I think that just puts him in a really, really unique position to be both a good engage and a good enchanter with scaling. And he protects, so not only does he have, like, he can get tanky stuff himself, you know, like a Frozen Heart if he wants to. He can also protect the AD carry. So you can be a Nautilus all day, you know, and have a bunch of armor, and that Zed, if they're fed, they're still going to get on your AD carry, and they're still probably going to kill them. Like, you do have CC that can help you out with that, but Rakan has CC, and he has a shield that he can put on him, and he takes Guardian. So that gives you a lot more protection for whoever your primary target is, whether it's the AD carry or the Akali or the Diana who's going in. Whoever it is, you can do that. And finally, he has really, really strong vision game because his W is a free dash. It doesn't require anything to jump to. Doesn't require a minion. Doesn't require a champion. So you can just go deep in their jungle, get that good early vision, especially if you take Ghost Portal, like I recommend in the support tier list. Get those early wards down on one of their camps. Then it just allows your team a whole bunch of extra power because you're going to be able to track where the jungler is and make better decisions off of that. Versus a lot of other supports, you really can't go that deep in the jungle, or you're putting yourself at risk. So Rakan is one of the people who can go a lot further, take on positioning that's a lot riskier than most other champs and get away with it. So I think overall that puts him in the best position. Okay. Nautilus is kind of the default who most people, like most critics, are probably going to say he's either number 1 or number 2. He's still extremely powerful. They did nerf his Q, like if you max Q, but I still think that maxing E is probably better a lot of times in solo Q. It gives you better wave clear, gives you much better damage in team fights because it's on a lower cooldown than Q. It's AoE, and it does a lot of damage. It can do up to 350 damage per target. It's a total single target damage up to 350, which is just nuts on a tank that has as much CC and as much survivability as Nautilus. So has really good engage. The hitbox on his hook is massive. It's very easy to hit. It's very fast. Has a really quick wind-up time. He can actually use it to escape. If you're getting ganked, you can hook to your own tower and potentially get away. That's something that a lot of other engaged supports can't do that well. Has the good wave clear with his E, which is something that a lot of other supports can't do. You might be thinking, well, who cares about wave clear if you're a support? But it does matter. You know, if you're trying to push for a good back timing, you're trying to push to make a play on Dragon, or even just to rotate or get some deep woods in their jungle. Whatever the case is, you can use your E to get the minions low, and then your AD carry can finish them off. So wave clear is very, very handy. He does take scuttles really quickly, too, in the early game if you're with your AD carry, because you have so many different routes and CCs, which lowers the armor on the scuttle and allows you to take it really quickly. So he just has all kinds of little perks that some people think about, some people don't think about, that make him really strong. And of course he has his ultimate where it's just point click, press R, and they're going to get knocked up, and it's going to knock up typically multiple people on the team. So it's a good AoE knockup, does pretty good damage. They did nerf the damage during the preseason, but it's still pretty solid. So overall, he's just a really good pick. He's got decent survivability, a little bit lower, I would say, than someone like a Leona, or certainly than like a Braum, but still pretty good survivability. The nerf on the hook does matter if you're maxing hook first, but I think that that's kind of a trap. I don't think it's that great most of the time. I would probably max Riptide in solo queue. Maybe it has a little bit more value in pro. I mean, the damage is nice. Yeah, the 250, but remember Riptide does 350 per, like, Riptide. If you max that out on potentially multiple targets. So really one of the only reasons you would want to max out your Q is just so you can throw more hooks. You can have a little bit more CC. Which is handy. It also costs a lot less mana, so that's a big thing too. If you don't get a big mana item, only costing 60 mana for the hook is pretty handy versus the 90 for the Riptide. So I really wish they would lower that cost down to like maybe 75 or 80 maxed out, but they're probably not going to do that. That'd make him potentially too strong in a solo lane. But you can go Frozen Heart. I think Frozen Heart's really good. I mentioned it on Rakan. I think it's pretty good on Nautilus. That extra mana is very solid on him. He loves the CDR. He has a very high impact ult. So I would recommend trying it out if they have 3 ADs on their team. They have like an 8, like if they're going to have a traditional AD carry probably, but of their top laner, mid laner, and jungler, if 2 of those are AD, so a grand total of 3 AD threats on their team, I would highly consider thinking about Frozen Heart. It's a really strong item, and a lot of people are disrespecting it. I talked about on my patch notes just how strong it is. It's 122% base efficiency. Then every person that's affected by that 700 range aura on the Frozen Heart is an additional 14% efficiency. So it's pretty easy to get over 200% efficiency on that item. And you might be wondering, well, what does that really mean? Just for comparison, most other tank items are less than 100% efficient. So it's Even in the best case scenarios with their passives and actives, they're not going to crack 150%. So most of them are like baseline below 100%, and then they have a hard time cracking that 150. So it's super, super efficient. You can still go the Zeeks, especially if you're going to get some value out of that magic resist. If they have a magic damage support or a magic damage jungler like an Echo or an Elise or something like that, you might still need the magic resist, so you'd get Zeeks. But if you don't need the magic resist, and especially if your AD carry's not doing that well or it's pretty unreliable, if you're not going to get a lot of value out of that Zeke's passive, just go with the Frozen Heart. It's going to give your team a lot more value, I think. Another thing that's been pretty popular, the 20% CDR, like I mentioned, is very, very nice too, particularly because you don't have CDR on Relic Shield anymore. But another thing that's been really popular lately is to go for Gargoyle Stoneplate on Nautilus as either a first or a second item. So that can be really handy too. You still have a lot of CC you can distribute, and it makes it very difficult to kill you. I would say maybe, think carefully before you do that. In pro play, where it's more likely they're going to have balanced damage. That's a lot better if they have like 2 major AD threats and 2 AP threats. That's going to be pretty good. But in solo queue, if you have that triple AD threat, once again, just consider going Frozen Heart instead. But Gargoyle Stoneplate can be good. So yeah, I think Nautilus is still going to be solid, especially if you do the Emax. Leona's very good still. I mean, she's one of the most contested picks. I think she is the most picked as far as like pro goes, which is really weird. You almost never saw Leona there. She's number 2 behind Nautilus now. And they're both don't have an amazing win rate. I think Brahm's just kind of tearing them up. Rakan's tearing them up. But she's still going to be really solid. I mean, kind of the key about Leona that differentiates her from some of the other champs is that E is able to go through minions, so you always have threat on the enemy. They can't hide behind minions in the lane, so if you're really far ahead, you can push your advantage hard and zone people off because you're always a threat. And then your R also obviously goes through minions and has a really long range, that 1200 engage range. And it's only 90-second cooldown. So it's like 30 seconds shorter than even Nautilus. So this is up a lot. So you can really make a ton of plays off of solar flares, especially if you can get them to flash early on. Maybe get them to flash when you're level 3, and then you hit level 6 before their flashes back up and make this play. It can be really solid. She does put out a bunch of damage, and she has low cooldowns on her CC. This is one of the big tickets that kind of differentiates her from Nautilus and a couple of those other ones. It's just the cooldowns are so low on everything that she has, so she can use it multiple times in a fight. 5-second cooldown on Shield of Daybreak, 6-second cooldown on Zenith Blade, and then the 90-second cooldown on the ult. So, got a lot of different things she can do. She does not put out as much damage as Nautilus in a bunch of team fights. Her E is a shorter engage range and a much smaller hitbox, so it's a little bit harder to land, but once again, you can throw it through minions. You can throw it through walls. Nautilus's hook can't go through walls. So she has a bunch of things that kind of differentiate her from Nautilus a little bit. I do think that she is tankier, especially with Aftershock, and you get a few points in Eclipse. Particularly, they changed this early on so that like little chip damage, dot damage, rune damage, auto attack damage, just stuff that doesn't do a ton can get reduced by quite a bit by this flat damage reduction that they added to her W. So that makes her much, much better earlier on. And I don't remember if that applies to minions or not. 50% reduction. I think that applies to minions too. Yeah. So it reduces minion damage by quite a lot as well. So that means that she takes trades very, very well early on. With the W, E, and your Q, you can really catch people off guard and kill them. So I think overall she's pretty solid. The thing about her, though, one additional thing about her is when she engages, she has to go all the way in. So that means that if your ADC is not managing the wave properly for a Leona engage, if they're pushing in too far to their tower and the enemy has it frozen outside the tower, unless you're intending to do a dive with your jungler, then it's going to be really hard to do anything. You're just going to be sitting around watching your ADC. So you got to try to look for roams, get some Mobies early, maybe roam around, use some cooldowns on mid lane. But she gets a lot better at higher elo because people know how to manage the waves and play around her pressure. But in solo queue, especially at lower elo brackets, people tend to just push, which is a good strategy with a lot of champs, but it can really feel bad for Leona unless you're taking advantage of that map pressure and roaming. So, but if she gets caught out on the roam by the jungler and some other people, she can get blown up. So she's a lot more dangerous to try to roam or get deep vision than someone like Rakan. But overall, she's still going to be solid. Okay, Nami. Nami's actually a bit stronger than I thought she was going to be. Last patch, I didn't think that the E buff was really going to be that big of a deal, but it turns out it did give her a pretty good win rate, pretty high. I mean, it's like a percentage over the next like legit support like Blitzcrank. I mean, Tarek is in there, I guess. He has a pretty low play rate, but nevertheless, she's good. She has good consistent harass, just point click W for nice damage, good healing. Her E has nice utility on it, especially that it applies to spells now. She's going to be really good with especially if you see some AP champions down there like Cassiopeia. Nami's a great lane right now. But there's a lot of lanes that are pretty good with her. So her sort of claim to fame as an enchanter is that she has way more CC than a lot of other enchanters do. Her bubble can hit multiple targets. She's got a slow that you can apply to your allies with the E. So it's potentially got a really long range. If you're chasing somebody down and you E onto your ally and then they're auto attacking, you know, you're slowing someone with effectively like over 1,000 range on it with pretty much a point click. And then her ultimate, you know, has really long range as well. It's got a knock up. It makes it very annoying for engaged champs to get through that, like a Nautilus or a Leona or even a Rakan. Like that can be a very, very frustrating ability to try to get around because it's going to stop you if you try to, you know, dash over it. So, pretty solid overall. She is a little vulnerable to hard all-ins. You know, if you don't have your ult, if you don't time it correctly, it does have like a half a second cast time. So you can still get grabbed by things like a Leona or like a Nautilus if they hit you directly. If they hit your ally, you might be able to peel them with a bubble or an ult in time. But if they hit you, it's going to be a problem. But doesn't scale as hard as things like Soraka or Janna. But all of that CC, I think, makes her a lot more useful in the early game. And she still is pretty good in terms of scaling later on as the game goes. Okay, and then finally, I just want to put Thresh up here as well. I think that Thresh is becoming a lot better. They have been nerfing some of the other hard engaged supports, most notably Nautilus, who's very good against Thresh. And so I think more people are going to start playing Leona. And Thresh has a very, very good matchup into Leona because her E is pretty telegraphed, and you can flay her back so that she doesn't get close enough to land her E, which is pretty nice. You can lantern people out if they don't get hit directly by her ultimate. If they just get clipped by the edge, then it's a slow, not a stun. And so that's going to allow you to lantern somebody out to safety. So he's a pretty good matchup overall into Leona. I would say he has a lot more utility than she does. As far as the lantern, the flay, the versatility of his hook. And even like the box is pretty good at just kind of gumming up fights and making it difficult to get through him to engage. His itemization is also a little bit more appealing because you can opt into things like a redemption if you're Thresh because you don't have to hard engage. You don't have to go all the way in. You can just land your hooks from a distance and not take them and still provide quite a bit of CC and utility for your team. So you don't have to build as many like prime time tank items on Thresh. Although you can get Frozen Heart, which I think, once again, if you have triple AD on the enemy team, very worthwhile because you can still hang out on the back line 700 range away and still apply that the Frozen Heart aura, which is pretty solid. So he is a little more versatile. He's not quite as versatile as Rakan, but he's more versatile than some of the other engaged supports because he can get, you know, stuff like a redemption. If you do take Font of Life, you could go Ardent Censer. It's a little funky. But he does have some AP ratios. His ult has a 1.0 AP ratio, and then his Flay has a small ratio, and his Q has a small ratio. His Lantern is a shield, so that does scale with plus healing and shielding. And if you take Font of Life, if you ever land the CC on somebody, then they are going to get that extra attack speed buff. And his attack speed buff, if he gets the attack speed off of the Ardent Censer, then he actually does all right with it because he does extra damage on his auto attacks with the souls. So that's not something you're going to see a lot, but it is on the table if you do want to get something like that. So he does have kind of a versatile build. He can't get Knight's Vow comfortably. It's a little weird. You only get half value because he counts as a ranged champion, so that's a little odd. It did change the Relic Shield around in the preseason, so you can comfortably get Relic Shield now. And I do like Relic Shield just because he does have AP ratios rather than the Shoulder Guards, which gives AD. I mean, the Shoulder Guards do scale with your Flay, but I would just rather have the bonus AP just because you have 3 different abilities have AP scaling and only one ability has AD. But it's up to you. The AD is going to do more damage for auto attack all-ins in the early game. Okay. So I think Thresh is pretty good just because of his matchup with Leona. Frozen Heart is a nice option on him. Um, so yeah, I think he's going to be all right. Okay. Back to ADCs. So I think that Miss Fortune is still going to be the strongest. They didn't really touch her. They did nerf Crit Cloak a little bit, so now it's down to 20% from 25%. But she doesn't get Storm Razor, so that's not going to affect her too much. And I think those were the only two major ADC changes. It was Crit Cloak and Storm Razor. And then Frozen Heart was the other one. But a lot of people still aren't going to get Frozen Heart because a lot of commentators are talking, saying that it's trash, except for me. So she really didn't get touched. So a lot of her big competition, like Jhin, Caitlyn, those champions are going to be hurt by the Storm Razor changes. And some people are saying, oh, it doesn't matter if it lost 5 AD. It's like, well, yeah, it does. I mean, 5 AD is 175 gold. Like, it matters, right? Like, it is the slow is what makes Storm Razor really strong. But nevertheless, losing 5 AD is a big deal, right? If Miss Fortune's getting something like Essence Reaver, which I think is 70 AD, and someone else is getting Storm Razor, it's now like 50 AD, then that's a big difference. Or if someone gets Infinity Edge first, which is 80 AD, it's a pretty big deal. But like, what's making Miss Fortune, and she's dominant in both pro play and solo queue. So in pro, she's got a 52% win rate, second most played ADC, and then in solo queue, I think she's up there, second highest win rate overall, with a really high pick rate. So what is it about Miss Fortune? Well, people are realizing she's a lot more versatile than people had thought in the past. So she gets a lot of free movement speed, which is really important in this meta because back timings are huge because you want to make sure you're powered up and ready to contest dragons, to help your support get deep wards, to go pick up that second Rift Scuttle if you can, or not Rift Herald. You want to get the Rift Scuttles as well. You want to be able to rotate over to mid lane, play around your mid laners. Because right now, a lot of the meta is dictated by mid laners and junglers, I think. Like, ADCs are important, sort of, but I think the hyperscaling ADCs that take like 2 or 3 items to come online are just too slow. I think the meta is really fast, and I think it's all about getting those objectives, all about powering up your mid laner and your jungler. And so Miss Fortune can help out with that quite a bit because she's got the speed to rotate with the support to help get the vision, help get the scuttles, help rotate over to mid. And then she just has really good teamfight presence too. I mean, obviously her ultimate, it just does an obscene amount of damage. If you've never looked at this thing before, it's 900% of your total AD at level 6. So even if you only have 100 AD, it's 900 damage that can hit multiple targets. And it's 1400 range. I mean, it's just an absurd amount of damage. Like, why does it do that much damage? And those waves can critically strike. Not for the full 100% bonus damage, but quite a lot of extra bonus damage. So getting Infinity Edge is actually pretty good. The Make It Rain is deceptively very strong too. I mean, it's a nice like slow. They did increase the slow a few patches ago. It's back to 40%. And that's going to make it almost impossible for the enemy to dodge something like a Blitz Hook, Thresh Hook, Pike Hook, Leona Engage, you name it. Like, big ticket skill shot that your support has, they're not going to dodge it unless they have a flash or a dash in their kit. Most of the time, if you do the Make It Rain. Also, you can Make It Rain and then bullet time so they can't run out of your bullet time as well either. It's 1,000 range on Make It Rain. That's ridiculous. So, that's really good. You get that bonus movement speed up to 100, and for some reason, it also gives you 100% extra attack speed. So, you can actually do pretty decent sustained damage compared to a lot of other champions out there. Now, it's not as fast as like Jinx's minigun, but it's still pretty fast. So she can actually dish out some damage. And she has high burst damage with double up. You can auto attack and then click double up for an extra free little burst of damage. And that extra modifier can crit if it bounces off of the person. Now, someone said last time that the damage off of Love Tap cannot crit, which makes sense. And they said the first part of double up can't crit. I guess crit's not technically an on-hit effect. Prioritizes. Double up's bounce is affected by critical strike. Okay. So the bounce can crit, and it's guaranteed to crit if it does, if it kills a minion and then bounces off of them. So it's pretty good harass overall. You basically have like almost 1100 range harassment that's on a very low cooldown. So even if like the second shot doesn't crit, if you're like hitting someone in the face with it, it's basically like an auto attack reset that has extra bonus damage on top of it. So she just does a lot of damage, both single target, good poke, good rotation, good utility with Make It Rain, awesome scaling. And that's really something that you're going to notice on a lot of these champions is their abilities do damage. They have good utility and or really good damage from their abilities. It's not just auto attacks, because auto attacks, like those type of champions, are just too slow right now. There are some that have decent win rates, but like your Twitches, your Jinxes, your Vaynes, to some extent like your Kog'Maws, your Caitlyn's. Caitlyn does have abilities that do damage, but people just don't do them correctly. People just never use the traps correctly. All of that's too slow. You have to have abilities that do damage, so that way you're ready to go with these dragons, these team fights. You don't need items. You just do a lot of damage. Items are nice. They help you scale, but you have other stuff you can do if you're behind, if you're getting hard camped, or if the game is just accelerating really quickly, then you're going to be relevant. So I don't know what the average game time is right now, but to me it feels quick. It feels like between 25 and 30 minutes. So it's a really quick game time. And a lot of times, you're just not going to be able to get to that full 3 items, and certainly not 4 in most games. So, Miss Fortune's going to be one of the best that operates on a very low gold income and can be very efficient. Aphelios is another one who is a huge bully in the early game. This guy just does 1 billion damage. I'm sure everyone's seen him. He's been nerfed like every single patch since release. Super OP. I honestly didn't think he was going to be that OP when he was released. I thought he was going to be really good. But to be fair, like, reading and trying to understand this guy is like trying to read a freaking Tolstoy novel. I don't know. I love Tolstoy. Anna Karenina is one of my favorite books, but, like, my God, there's so many different facets of this thing. And I don't understand all of them still. But I'll tell you who does understand it, people that have been playing him a lot lately, especially kind of higher-end people. And he is a very scary champion. You do not want to face up against this guy, someone who knows what they're doing. He gets a ton of extra flat damage, and then he just does a lot of damage. Whenever he hits his Q, like his Calibrum, and then lands that moonshot, it just does a ton of extra damage on top of it. And it has been nerfed, but, just the range on this thing is huge. The Severum just gives him a lot of extra free sustain in the laning phase, so he can go crit but still have sustain to win poke wars with people. Has pretty good all-in with the Onslaught if he gets you isolated, kind of like a Kaisa Q. And then the Gravitum is really annoying. I've seen an entire game just won basically off of a Gravitum ult. So expunges all affected Gravitum for a slow. He ulted, I don't remember what it was. Let's see, Gravitum enemies are slowed by this amount for 99%, and then he activated the E on them, or whatever, to root them all for 1 second. My team was, like, trying to siege. He comes in, hits that on him, and then Orianna Ball, like, flies in, ults everybody, and then they all just engage and kill him. So it's like, that's what I'm talking about. He just has so much utility. He's got the range here with, like, really good poke in the laning phase, free sustain, like, really good chain CC. You can pair together with your allies. Extremely high AoE damage with this Infernum burn, plus really good wave clear with the flamethrower, which for some reason can crit. And then this thing with the turret just has really good zone of control, does a ton of damage. So there's just so many different things this guy does, and it's just too much. So they have nerfed his numbers a lot. He is technically below 50%, but there are a lot of really dangerous champions out there that are below 50%. I think Rakan might even be below 50%. And that can just mean that the champion's hard to play, that people don't understand how to optimize the champion. So sometimes win percentages mean things. Sometimes they really don't, because it's very scary if someone is like actually pretty good. And I don't think you have to be a one trick. I think you just need to play him a little bit, and you can be very good with him. So we'll see. I think that he is definitely going to be number 2 still. Now, my next one might surprise people a little bit. If you haven't watched my stream, or if you haven't been keeping track of win rates lately, and I know I just said win rates aren't everything, but I've played Cassiopeia ADC before, and I'm here to tell you she's really good in the ADC role right now, because she fits into exactly what I was just talking about, is that she has a lot of abilities that do, like, very, they have great utility, and they have great damage, even early on in the game. She doesn't need a lot of items to do a lot of damage. So I think that she's a very solid bot laner. I mean, she does have a good win rate as well. So it's not like super wacky. I mean, it's a low play rate. It's below 1%. So, you know, you got to take that with a grain of salt. But if you've ever played against like a good Cassiopeia, you'll kind of know what's going on here. Is that pretty much like once you get your Tear of the Goddess, like you can just start taking over. Because you just have so much mana and you can just wreck people in the bot lane. Now, one thing about Cassiopeia is that she can't buy boots. And she really, really wants levels. So, you know, you are going to slow yourself down by going in the bot lane because every time you get more levels, your Twin Fangs, a lot of the damage on your Twin Fangs is based on your level, not based on how many points you have in it. The points that you have in it certainly help, but the bonus damage, that's what you get for putting points in it. But this baseline damage here, which accounts for the majority of the damage, is based on your level. And your extra movement speed is also based on your level. I don't think is the health. The health is not based on level of healing. That's just whatever it is. So you kind of want that. But at the same time, you have extra protection in the bot lane, and you have extra potential to chain CC together in the bot lane. So that's kind of your trade-off. Is it's like, yes, you're not leveling up as fast, but you have protection. And you have like follow-up potential. So if like your Nautilus goes in on somebody, chain CCs them, you can throw the miasma down so that they can't flash out of it after that, and then just you get a free hit with your Q, and then you just go to town and blow them up. And the thing is, a lot of other ADCs, most of the other ADCs being played right now, cannot match your damage if you land that Q. You land that Q and just start spamming Twin Fang, you're going to out-damage almost every ADC before they get their first major crit item. Because you don't need a lot of AP. I mean, the AP is nice on her, but just the baseline damage is really, really high because you got to remember these things just like machine gun out there so fast. The only thing is you can yourself, so you got to have that tier first. But she's really good at trading, really nice range on that Q, outranges most ADCs as far as, you know, their ability to trade in the early game. She's got the sustain off a Twin Fang if you need to do that on the minions. It's really easy to last hit as her and push. You're pretty much guaranteed your CS with Twin Fangs. You're very good against hard engaged champions to an extent because of Petrifying Gaze. It makes it very hard to go in on her, especially with someone like a Rakan. This is a nightmare if you're really good with this. So she's got a lot of self-peel. She's got a lot of protection with the miasma, with the Petrifying Gaze, and really good combos with other supports down there, particularly Nami. So if you have a Nami on your team, your Twin Fang's going to apply that slow, and you could just machine gun out those Nami trades really easily. So I think Nami's an awesome combination with her down there right now. And she does take dragons extremely fast as well. And she's an AP option. So if your team has that triple AD, or they already have the double AD, let's say, right? Or maybe even triple, right? Like maybe they're running top lane Set, they're running jungle Kha'Zix, and they're running mid lane Kiana. Well, now you can run Cassiopeia bot lane to help bring balance to your team. So I think just having an AP champion that you can run in the bot lane that is viable in the bot lane is pretty good to have up your sleeve as well. So I think she's really underrepresented. I think she's potentially really strong in the bot lane. She does most of what you want AD carries to do, which is really heavy sustain damage, but she also has great utility with her ult, with her miasma. And she's, you know, just a very strong champion in general. So you are going to scale a little bit slower in terms of levels, once again, but you do have the protection, and you do have the wombo combo potential with a lot of these hard engaged supports. Okay. Senna's another one that, and of course, if you like peel somebody in, if you pull them in with like a thresh hook or like a pike hook or something like that, and they're facing you, then you just can ult them like right when they get pulled in, and that's a really good combo as well. Senna's the other one, or another one, I should say, that's also going to be really strong right now. She has the highest win rate overall. Her build path is unaffected by the crit nerfs because she typically goes mana immune into Dustblade, and then I think she might get Ghostblade after that. She basically goes lethality items. And she's not going to do as much sustain damage as a lot of other champions out there, so she's not going to crank down towers and dragons and barons. Though she does pretty decent burst damage, and this has a lot of utility. She's got the heal, obviously, from her Q, the shield from her ult. She has really nice, potentially AoE CC with her W, if people don't spread out in team fights, especially. Really nice range for the poke. And she gets extra movement speed whenever she auto-attacks people as well. So, it's just, she's really slippery, she's hard to engage on, and she just puts out pretty respectable damage in fights. So, I think overall she's good. She's hard to play correctly. You do have to practice her a lot, but she's just exactly the kind of thing that I've been talking about, which is where you want utility and you want someone who can function pretty well off of low gold just in case you're getting hard camped. And the fact that the mana immune is a 2,400 gold item, and she actually does leverage the mana well. I've always critiqued like Kaisa and things like that buying Tear the Goddess because it puts you so far behind early. But with Senna, because you have so many abilities that you can use that like bring a lot of value. So like your Q, for example, heals you, heals your ally, wave clears, and provides poke on the enemy. And it's pretty expensive. I mean, that's a pretty good use of your mana overall. And then being able to fish for last embraces is pretty handy as well. So I think she makes very good use of that extra mana that you get. You're not just sitting there, letting it go to waste like I think you're doing with Kaisa most of the time. I mean, I guess with Kaisa you can use like your Q to help like push the wave a little bit more, and you can try fish for hitting W's and stuff. But I just feel like Senna, just if you're gonna play someone who has to go mana immune, I feel like Senna just synergizes with it a little bit better. Then finally Varus, and this one might surprise some people too if you haven't really been watching Pro in the off season, but I guess people in Korea were picking up Varus a bit more. I don't know if he's been picked up in the LEC as much. A little bit. He's got 50% there. But I do think that Varus is pretty strong right now because he fits the same profile we've been talking about over and over again, where he just has really nice utility. He has really good poke and wave clear with his Q. His ultimate is on a low cooldown. Really good chain CC with a lot of other hard engaged supports out there. So that's going to be handy. And unlike Ashe that just hits like one person with this is the main reason that like Ashe doesn't get played in Pro but Varus does a lot, is that it's just so disruptive in team fights if someone gets hit with this chain of corruption, because it starts spreading out to other people and it just makes everyone like move aside and just creates a lot of confusion in fights. And so that's really handy. And he scales super hard with attack speed because he gets a huge attack speed steroid anytime he gets a kill or an assist. He's going to get 30% extra attack speed, or plus 30% of whatever your bonus attack speed is. So I just think that's really nice. And his Blighted Quiver does magic damage on hit, so he actually has something that works really well with Blade of the Ruined King and Gensu's together. It's not like you're just randomly getting a Blade of the Ruined King into like Hurricane or Blade of the Ruined King into Infinity Edge or whatever Ashe does sometimes. I mean, Ashe is okay, but... Hi.
Sup?
Ashe is okay, but I feel like Varus has a bit more utility. And the Hail of Arrows applying grievous wounds is really nice too, so you don't necessarily always have to get an Executioner's if you think you can kill them before they step out of that hail. What's going on, dear? You look a little confused.
I should have put another support right there. Shelves are bowing a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Whatever.
That's right. Whatever's right.
I'm going back to do it now. You just gonna have some bow and shelves.
That's right. That's the spirit. But yeah, I think he's pretty good. I mean, Blade of the Ruined King is a little, a little iffy as like an early item that he has to get, but it's okay. You're really getting him for the ult, and you're getting him for like his ability to get some crazy resets, almost like a Jinx in a fight with his Living Vengeance. And he has pretty long range. I mean, it's 575. It's not as long as Caitlyn or Senna, but it's longer than most other auto attackers. So pretty much getting him for the Wombo combo, Chain of Corruption. If you get camped, you're 0-4, whatever, you can still use Chain of Corruption in fights. And then eventually you will scale with your Living Vengeance. So I don't think he's quite as good as the previous 4, but he's still pretty legit. Isn't that right, dear?
Mm-hmm.
What's Rory doing?
Sleeping.
She's sleeping in.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sleeping in, Sadie?
Oh, she doesn't feel good, so
Oh my
we'll let her
goodness.
sleep as long as she wants.
I say. Sadie keeps asking for food that's not here.
That's weird. She never does that.
Okay, let's get into mid lane here, and let's see if we can actually get this done in an hour. That'd be amazing.
Kiana.
That's right.
Diana.
Kiana. Hey, would you mind getting me some more chocolate milk? Some chalky?
Oh, okay.
Thanks, dear.
And I'm your busboy and your waiter?
Yeah. So I think Kiana is still going to be number one in mid lane. I mean, mid lane is one of the weirdest roles because there's so many different things that are viable, and that's part of the reason that it's so strong right now. But, you know, there's a few things in common with a lot of these champions, and that's high mobility, high damage. And if they have survivability, that's nice. Kiana doesn't have as much, but she has, like, extreme mobility because she could actually get mobility boots, clear the waves super fast, and then go roam to side lanes and just make a lot of plays. So she's just a total terror. It's really, really hard to deal with the map pressure that she can put down if she gets far ahead. And it's just the wave clear. I don't remember which ability it is that she clears with so fast. I don't remember if it's her E or her Q or whatever it is. I'm not a Kiana expert, but I do know that she tends to get priority on people all the time and then just rotate around and just sit on bottom lane. Thanks, dear. And she's got that root. So yeah, she's got a lot of different options with what she does, but it's just mostly mobility, super high damage, and a fairly low cooldown ult with the supreme display of talent, which is very good in team fights as well. And pro tip as well, if you do have like a Jarvan, then this is an awesome combo with Jarvan too, because people that are, I believe, knocks back enemies, and it stops upon hitting terrain. I'm not sure actually. When it hits the terrain, it'll make the shockwave around the terrain. So yeah, it'll pretty much stun everyone that's in a Jarvan ult. So it is a really good combo with Jarvan ult or like Trundle ult or Trundle Pillar rather. So there's a lot of stuff that can work with it, but Jarvan is pretty good in the meta right now overall, pretty common. But even if you don't have Jarvan, like there's just almost always a way that you can like get them close to a wall, push them into the wall, and blow them up. So she does a ton of damage, really good utility in team fights with a supreme display of talent, and just the fact that she's so far up there is because she's one of the few champions that for some reason is allowed to have really high wave clear and really high roam potential. Riot has tried to get rid of that on almost every champion so far. And these other champions on this list, their wave clear is not going to be quite as good as Kiana's is because it's been nerfed a lot over time. Like the champions with super good wave clear, like your Anivias, your Ziggs, your Zerats and things like that they allow to have super good wave clear, typically can't roam as well for that reason. But anyways, she's the exception to the rule. And in pro play, definitely, I'm really surprised she didn't get hit on this patch. She probably will in the next patch. If they're hitting Akali, they'll probably hit her next. Now, she only has a 58% win rate, I guess, overall, but that's still pretty good for the fourth most played champion in the first week here. So yeah, she's going to be strong. Diana's kind of the new girl on the block that I think is really good too. Now, you're not going to see her as much in pro, I don't think. A couple of games. She's a lot more vulnerable. She does have a dash now, which helps out a little bit, but she's still going to be a bit more vulnerable than someone like a Kiana. She can't get priority quite as well, but she is a lot tankier. The fact that she can go Rod of the Ages early on and still have enough damage to kill you is really nice. She does get shielding off of her W. So I think she's just kind of like an earlier game version of Kassadin. I think that Kassadin does start taking over a lot harder after level 11. But Diana definitely is a menace overall. I think in solo queue she still has one of the higher win rates. Yeah. So she's still a 53% win rate with almost a 10% play rate, which is really huge. So like of the major champions, champs that have more than like a 3% play rate, she's going to be the highest win rate by a pretty good chunk. I guess Echo's not that much lower. Echo's like 1% lower, but yeah, ever since that rework, this gave her a ton of extra damage because her like ability that pulled people in, which used to be her W, did no damage before, and now they just moved it onto a new ult that does a lot of damage and also pulls people in. So it's like now her, or I guess it used to be her E. Now her E actually does damage when that ability used to do no damage. So it just added an entire extra like rotation of damage into her kit, which is pretty huge, and gave her like AoE damage as well. So it does bonus damage when it hits multiple people um, in a fight. And then her Pale Cascade, like I said before, has pretty good shield strength on top of it too. So scales pretty well with Rod of the Ages. So decent mobility, really good brawler, pretty decent sustained damage too, because she can take Gnasher's Tooth and she gets a lot of extra attack speed whenever she hits spells, I think. Yeah, after casting an ability, you get a ton of extra attack speed. So not the worst in the world versus tanks and things like that, but still going to be pretty solid overall. Okay, Echo's the other one. Now, I do think that Echo is better in the jungle overall, but I think Echo is pretty close to what I would call most OP on the patch for solo queue, just because he can be flexed and be effective in solo queue in 2 different lanes, in mid and jungle. So we'll go ahead and talk about him here, although he's the top jungler, I think, in my mind. And this is like for Platinum minus, maybe low Diamond minus. Once you start to get into like Master and Challenger type of stuff, it's obviously going to get a bit different. Or if you're like an Iron, it's going to be a bit different. But just kind of that mid to upper mid sort of tiers that we're looking at here. But yeah, Echo, I don't know where his thing is here. He just does a little too much of everything. Like, he does a lot of damage. He has a really big shield. So he has like 2 different defensive abilities with an AoE, hard CC, multiple forms of mobility, and extremely high scaling with both his damage and his defense. So it's just way too much. I don't think he's been played in pro, and I'm not entirely sure like what's up with that, why he never gets played. I guess he was played twice. There must be like some really good counter picks to him or something, but I don't see those happening in solo queue a lot. So if you look at his passive, whenever he applies resonating stacks, basic attacks and damage apply resonating stack for 4 seconds. At 3 stacks, this is consumed. So it's 3, I believe, on the same target. Can't affect the single target more than once every few seconds, but you can trigger it on multiple targets. Right? Basic attacks and damaging abilities. Now, his Time Winder can hit multiple targets. Echo's attacks deal this. Bonus magic damage of this. You can get a stun. Okay, like his Phase Drive does multiple targets worth of damage, and Chrono Break potentially can do that too. So it does pretty good damage with a 0.8 on it. That's a lot of extra damage. And then the big thing is he just gets like 1 billion movement speed. So triggering that against a champion gives you, at level 6, 60% bonus movement speed for 2.5 seconds. Non-decaying. Non-decaying, just straight up 60% movement speed for 2.5 seconds. That's just ridiculous. So it's so much movement speed. And it's a pretty good amount of burst damage. Time Winder, has a total of a 0.9 AP ratio, which is huge, with a 260 that can hit multiple targets. And I don't believe it does reduce damage against minions, right? After traveling such and such, goes back, finishing the path, returns at higher speed, doing more damage. Yeah, so full damage to minions. So he actually can wave clear pretty quickly off of that. And then the Parallel Convergence puts out a huge shield with 150% AP ratio. Like, what is that? Why doesn't it scale with points? Because I think that's what you max last, because it just automatically stuns him for 2.25 seconds, even with 1 point in it, and has 150% AP ratio with 1 point in it for some reason. Like, it's way, way too good for just 1 point. So you've got that. And then the Phase Drive just basically gives you a double dash, right? So you can dash for 375, and then your next attack gets 300 bonus range. So it's basically like he has like a 700 range, 7 or 800, something like that, range engaged. Just like point, click, boom, you're right on top of him. So, and it's on a really low cooldown. So you can run 60% movement speed. You can slow them down by a lot with Time Wander. You could potentially stun them. You can, gap close onto them, just blink right onto them. within 800 range. And then if they ever catch you, if they ever actually want to trade with you, you can just press R, which is on a super low cooldown, and it pretty much heals you back all of your health and can potentially one-shot them by doing a lot of damage. This is what makes him really good against a lot of assassins in the mid lane, is they'll just use all their stuff to try to kill him, then he has chrono breaks, resets, gets all of his health back, and just carries on his way killing him. So yeah, he just does way too much. If you chain CC him, you might be able to kill him before he's able to chrono break, but it's really rare that happens. So he does take some skill to use correctly. He's not mindless. You do want to try to set up your chrono break so that they're standing on top of your shadow. You have to set up your parallel convergence. So he does require some prep on some of his abilities, but the best case scenario is just too strong. Okay, so I think Echo's really good. He doesn't roam quite as well as some of these other champs. It's pretty good. His burst is a little bit lower early on, so that's why I just have him at number 3. But like I said, overall he could be number 1 just because he can be flex to jungle. But as far as just like purely mid lane, he's going to be strong, but not as strong as some other ones. Okay, Kassadin. Everyone's familiar with this champ, but right now I just feel like he's still really good. They did nerf him a couple of patches ago, like his W or something. Like, it doesn't matter. It took off a little bit of damage on his W. He's just too consistent. And I mean, it seems a little weird that you would have someone like Kassadin up this high in a meta that I just said earlier on was like, 25 to 30 minute meta, where you don't have a lot of time to charge up. And I suppose like his win rate's not like insane. It's at 49%. But it just feels like he just has a really good matchup against pretty much anything that's not AD in the mid lane. And if he just ever gets like a couple of kills, it feels like he can just take off, because he's just really tanky for how much damage he puts out. Like, he starts putting out quite a bit of damage. He has a ton of mobility. He's really good on the roam. Oh, they nerfed the 5 movement speed on him, I think was what it was. They nerfed 5 movement speed on him, and they nerfed like some damage on his W. But yeah, he just always has 15% reduced magic damage. His null magic sphere gives him a shield against magic damage with a 0.7 ratio on it. And then his force pulse. So like every single one of his abilities does damage too. So like all 4 of them do damage and have utility on him. And then of course you have the Rift Walk, which still just does like a zillion damage if you charge it up correctly. So yeah, I think he's just a little too good against mages. He does take some time to come online. He doesn't have very much wave clear, so that is kind of, one of his drawbacks. But there are still a lot of like really good sustained runes with him, so you can still take like Fleet Footwork, Bloodline, and then Ravenous Hunter and Taste of Blood, and just get like 4 sustain champions with him. And then I don't know what else he would take with it. I guess you could start with I don't know if he starts Corrupting Pot or not. Probably not, because he doesn't attack a lot, but it just feels like he's just really hard to punish in the laning phase, and he can just snowball out of control, and he's just extremely difficult to deal with, especially because a lot of these top-end champions are going to be AP. You have Kiana, who's kind of the exception, and then sometimes you still see like the Zeds and the Talents and things like that, but a lot of times it's going to be mages in the mid lane. And he tends to punish them pretty hard. Okay, and then Akali I have as the last one down here. Now, Akali is like the most OP champ in like pro play, but I think a lot of people in solo queue don't always use her correctly. She has a pretty low win rate, so I think that she's deadly. I think that you got to respect her, but most people are not going to be that great on her, especially under Diamond. She's squishy. She can be killed if you do get a hold of her. But she does have a lot of utility, right? She can escape with her E. She can escape with her ult. She can gap close with her E. I think she's a lot of fun to watch, personally. Both in my games and professionally. So I hope they don't nerf her too hard. I know next patch they're coming down with some pretty hard nerfs. But they got to nerf her pretty hard. I mean, she's literally been banned 60 times and played once in the first week or whatever of pro. So she's got some problems, but ultimately, I think right now, as of 10.2, she's still a very good champion if you're good on her, but that's a pretty big if. Okay. Echo, just talked about him. I think the fact that he's one of the few AP junglers that does scale pretty well. Now, he's not really that great in the early game, but he is one of the few, like, hard carry. If the game goes, longer than 20 minutes, you can actually do stuff. A lot of these other junglers are going to fall off pretty hard in the late game. So, I think overall he's really strong in the jungle. Although, once again, I'm not sure. I don't remember his exact win rate. Oh, there you go. One of the highest. 52.5. But yeah, he's just a menace in the jungle as well. Now, as much as I hate to say it, I feel like Lee Sin is actually really good. As much, as I've talked about Lee Sin in the past, there have been a lot of good Lee Sins lately that I've seen, both on my team and on the enemy team. Maybe I'm just seeing, maybe they're all coming out. But he does feel really good right now. In general, I think a big part of it is just Conqueror. It just gives him so much AD and so much healing and just so much dueling potential that I think he was missing in the past. He really leverages that healing too, and the extra AD that he gets. So yeah, losing the true damage is kind of lame, but getting that extra AD is so nice on him because he has such good. And the true damage, I mean, Conqueror lost its true damage in the preseason. But the extra AD and the extra healing might even be better for him at a certain point. Because he has such strong AD ratios, right? Like, he's got 100% on his Q and 100% on the connect back. So that ultimately becomes 200% of your bonus AD. Then he's got 100% of your bonus AD off of your Tempest. And 200% bonus AD off of his kicks. He just has insane AD ratios on his abilities. So stacking all that up on Conquer is pretty huge. And he can stack it so easily, too. Because a lot of his abilities have multiple parts. Like, you have Sonic Wave, hit that, that's 2 stacks. Connect with it, that's another 2. Auto attack 2 times really fast. Hit him with Iron Will. That's another couple of stacks. Hit him again. Or I guess Iron Will doesn't trigger it, but Tempest would trigger it. So just all of these spells, since all of your abilities basically have 2 spells, except for your R, you just stack it up extremely quickly. He just does a ton of damage in duels. Everyone knows this about Lee Sin. He's extremely dangerous in the early game. And then that kick later on in the game does have really good engage potential, especially in smaller scale skirmishes if you do it correctly. So, and he can see if there are any sorts of invisible champions running around, and he hits his Q on him, he can see them. He's got great mobility. He can come from weird gank angles. Because everyone knows what Lee Sin is. There's no surprise there. So I think the main reason that I feel like he's been popping off a lot in the preseason and into the start of season 10 is just because he just does so well with Conquer, and it just opens up a lot of extra builds for him. And I think I've been seeing a lot more just like, definitely Warrior, but just like more aggressive Lee Sin builds after that, like Warrior into Cleaver. Sometimes I'll see Tiamat too, and I'm not sure about the Tiamat. It's supposed to help him clear. I'm not a Lee Sin expert. Obviously, but I'm not really sure about that one. Yeah, a lot of people don't do that. I've seen some Lees do that. I feel like that's kind of a waste. I feel like it's the Warrior Cleaver that is really what's allowing him to start cranking. But yeah, it's very strong. I think we are in an early game meta too for the most part. Aside from Echo, Echo's not that great in the early game, but a lot of these other champs, especially Lee Sin and Elise, are both really, really good at going and harassing the lanes, and really controlling bot lane in particular is super important in the early game. So I think that's pretty huge. Controlling bot lane, controlling those dragons, and just trying to snowball the game in the early game, especially since you lost the money and the experience off of the camps. I think just someone who can gank and make stuff happen early on is going to gain some benefits out of that. So Lee's pretty good, and with Conquer, he actually can put up some like pretty good, like scary damage even in the mid to late game, which is something that he didn't really do that much before, at least not when I saw him, unless he was mega fed, where it feels like he's a lot more relevant a lot more often once he gets that Conquer stacked up. Probably because of the healing combined with the healing that he gets off of his own E. This ends up being a lot. I mean, 30% here and then 15% off Conquer. is a lot of extra sustain. So he's pretty solid. And then Elise is another one that's been coming up a lot lately as well. And we'll move this a bit quicker. It's going to be over an hour. I guess we're going to have to hour 15 minutes, like 15 minutes per roll. But Elise is pretty good too. Has been coming up quite a bit. Once again, it's an early game meta. She's one of the best champions in the early game. Very similar to Lee Sin in many ways. She has multiple, like, 2 different modes for most of her abilities. That gives her a lot of extra damage, a lot of extra utility early on. Now, it is nice that she does a lot of magic damage. So if you have an 80 damage top laner and an 80 damage mid laner, it is nice to have 80 damage out of her. Now, she does take things like Dragon pretty quickly because of her Spiderlings can do some of the tanking. Not like there are faster takes out there, but it's pretty good. But her real claim to fame that not a lot of other junglers can do is she can actually dive really, really early on because she can go in for the damage with somebody and then she can repel to basically dodge a tower shot and reset the aggro. So she's one of the best, and that's why you see her a ton in pro. She's one of the best at diving, although she only did have a 45% win rate. She was still played a ton. But she's one of the best at diving at level 3 in the game, so it's great for setting up those slow pushes. So for really high elo, she's good, but even in low elo, if you get used to her, I mean, if you jump on somebody out of a bush, you hit them with the web, they're basically going to get one shot. So if you're really good at pathing and tracking the enemy jungler and you can predict where they're going to be or predict counter ganks, and she can destroy people. And she does have pretty good utility later on. If you get this Cocoon max, maybe like second, I'm not sure when you max it. But I guess you don't even have to max. It's 1.6 with like 1 point in it. But that's actually pretty good from range. It's a decent way to start a fight. It's pretty low risk overall. And you're ranged, so you can help auto attack towers when you're sieging later on, when you're in your human form. So I think that she's got some pretty good utility. She does not have as much like flank, like pick people off potential as Lee Sin does if you get like an award-winning kick. But she does still have like a pretty decent chunk of utility in the mid game. And I would say it's pretty close, maybe even more burst damage than Lee if you get to like 3 items. Because she keeps building damage. Like Lee eventually will start, he'll get his warrior and then cleaver. And then after that, it's usually defensive stuff. Whereas she keeps building damage the entire time. So she keeps scaling up with their defenses to where she's pretty much going to permanently be able to one-shot squishies if she ever lands a cocoon on him. So yeah, she's solid right now. I still think that Nunu's really good. He has fallen quite a bit from where he was in the preseason. He's still pretty high up there. Not a lot of people talk about him or play him, but he just clears the jungle so fast. He's got such a safe clear. He stays healthy. And he has really good ganks for a tank. Most tanks don't gank that well in the early game, but because he can roll that snowball from so many different angles, including straight up the lane, gives him a lot of gank potential. And then he's got slow with his E. He's got the root with the second part of his E. He has a lot of effective health in fights because he can chomp people and heal himself. He obviously takes things like dragons and barons really well. It's almost impossible to steal objectives from him. And he has some utility component to him too, which can help out a lot with your AD carry or any other auto attacker. Your Blood Boil gives that extra attack speed. People forget about that a lot. And he can even go like other utility items if he wants to. So he can go things like a Knight's Vow if your team needs that type of thing. I think that Frozen Heart could be another option on him potentially. I know I'm really high on Frozen Heart with a lot of stuff, but if your support doesn't get it, could be a decent option. Typically, you do want a Dead Man's Plate with him instead, just so you can rotate around and gank a little bit better, but that could potentially be an option if they have a triple AD comp. Now, I don't remember how cripples stack, though, because his ult does apply a cripple as well. I think they stack multiplicatively, so he may not get as much benefit out of that as somebody else would off of Frozen Heart, but he does have different options he can get, is what the main point there as far as his itemization. And then Vi is another one that I'll put up here. There are several that you could put. I mean, like Zach's pretty good. Master Yi, obviously, if you get really far ahead with him, is going to be super good. But I have Vi here just because she has a really nice clear early. She does take Dragon super well, super safe at 4. And then she's got a nice point-click ult that did get a really good quality of life buff a couple of patches ago, and I believe that's to where you can't like flash out or you can't be displaced whenever you're ulting. So it didn't seem like a big deal, but basically they're going to be suppressed the entire time during the ult. So it gives you a lot more effective CC time on that ult. Rushes unstoppably, does his physical damage, knocks somebody up, and deals the same damage when you go down. So she has quite a bit of damage. Her denting blows do lower the armor permanently, or not permanently, but like for your entire team, I should say, whenever you do land those attacks. The Vault Breaker does quite a bit of burst damage. And your ult is on a pretty long cooldown of 120 seconds. So good dragon take, good clear, pretty good duelist. If she lands her Q out of a bush on somebody, it can do quite a bit of damage. Just a nice kind of early game clear, mid game, just start blowing people up type of champ. So she's okay. And I think they gave her, it's been a while since I've played her, but yeah, she does with an ability grants Vi. Yeah, it gives her like a pretty big shield. And I thought there was something else that like gave her a shield or like refreshed her shield or something or other. But either way, she's all right. She's good, consistent, kind of point click, get your kills type of champ. Okay, and then the final role here, we have top lane. I think Set is the most OP top laner right now. It's actually kind of close with Darius. But this champ is just ridiculous. If you've watched my stream over the last few days, you know, I've had some choice words about Set from time to time. He just takes so long to kill, and he just does an obscene amount of damage and gets a crazy amount of health off of his Haymaker. Like, this ability is just OP. It's like a 3-second shield, and it does rapidly decay, but in combat, you know, it's going to be there. And the fact that it gives just like an insane amount of true damage as well. Like, I've been hit with this thing. There was one game where I think I was hit with 500 true damage. He had like a black cleaver. It was a top lane Set. I don't even remember. I think it was like a black cleaver. I don't even think he had another completed item. And he still did 500 true damage to me when I was like Recon or something. And I had like 900 HP off of a basic ability. And then it was like, you know, and someone was like arguing with me in chat, you know, like, oh, it's not OP, blah, 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 blah. And then it was like 2 minutes later, fought him again. Like, I literally just went up, engaged with him, like, W'd onto him. He punched me, like, once before I grabbed him. And then I ran out of there, like, I W'd into him, E'd back out to somebody else. He haymakered me. The radius on this thing is absurd. Look at this. The width is 805. I mean, I swear it's just about the length of the entire lane. It takes up the whole lane, just about. I dodged the true damage part, but you can't. It's almost impossible to dodge the other part. Hit me with the physical part. Still did 300 damage. I had 120 armor at the time. I was building Frozen Heart. And then he just like walked up and tackled me with his ult and punched me a couple of times and I was dead and he walked out. It's like 900 damage again, almost instantly. And he had like one item. So it's just like he does way too much damage and is way too difficult to kill with almost no items. And there are so many different items you can build on him to be really effective as well. So, you know, his escapes, I think he's kind of Darius-esque. I just have him up a little bit higher than Darius. Just because he can get that true damage earlier on with the Haymaker. I think he's a bit harder to kill. And then his ult, like that point-click ult, is really good at starting fights and potentially CCing multiple people. Rather than just like relying on resets. Like Darius is stronger if you get a kill off of your ult and you can get those resets. Darius is going to be stronger. But just starting off cold in a fight without having like anything warmed up or getting any resets, I think Set might be a little bit stronger, but I don't know. I'm sure he has some weaknesses out there somewhere. You know, his mobility is not that great, but it just feels like trying to take this guy down in a fight is just way, way harder than it should be off of, you know, virtually no items, and he just does like 1 billion damage. So I don't know. I think he's really strong right now. Someone told me like the websites are kind of differing a little bit on like what his win rates are. U.GG here is saying he's at 56% win rate with a 54% ban rate. So I don't know which ELO brackets this is looking at offhand, but yeah, he's really, really strong. I can tell you that. I know that this one, he was a little bit lower, but this is looking at patch 10.1. So anyways, I think he's too strong. Okay, so Darius is the other one that I think is really good. And he's just, like, doing so well. And I think a lot of it, again, is because of the changes to Conquer. Like, he already does a lot of true damage with his ult. So the fact that now you're going to give him a lot of flat AD and a lot more healing may have actually buffed him, the changes in the preseason to Conquer. So, I mean, everyone's familiar with Darius too. He just does a ton of damage. It just feels like if you're a melee champion, it just seems like you're just going to lose to Darius, whether you're a tank or a fighter or just anything that's melee. If he gets a hold of you, he's going to win. Is what it seems like to me a lot of times. Unless you just, like, severely outplay him. But yeah, it just does a ton of damage, like a massive amount of true damage on his ult. Getting huge stacks, and it's getting that reset, and really not even the ult necessarily. Like, the ult is important, but the fact that you can apply the blood stacks to everybody after you have that, after applying full hemorrhage stacks to an enemy champion or killing one with guillotine, he gains Noxian Might for 5 seconds. Gains so much bonus attack damage and instantly applies full hemorrhage stacks through his usual means. So once you get the full stacks on somebody and you can just, like, apply it to everybody else, it just does a ton of bleed damage. And I've been seeing a lot of Darius's take Ghost, which does put you at a little bit of a macro disadvantage because you don't have teleport later on in the game, but you're just, like, you're such a monster in team fights when you show up with that Ghost because, I guess, you're just going to stick to people and you're going to get those kills probably. And there's just really not a lot people are going to do about it. You know, because even if they flash, if you have flash and ghost, you're going to get on top of them. And then once you get that cripple on them, you know, even if they flash or whatever, you're just going to run them down, kill them, and then start getting those resets. So I feel like that's something that is just really, really strong. And a lot of people, like a lot of teams have moved away from the hard split push type of comps. And people are more and more focused on these team comp or like team fight comps around dragons, around barons, and things like that. So there's a lot more group up and kill people type of champs. I mean, if you have like a Misfortune or a Rumble or just anything that's going to do like massive AoE damage and Darius gets to come in for the cleanup, you know, that's a really scary thing. I saw earlier, I think it was in a game earlier tonight where there was a Darius that was 0-3 coming out of the laning phase. We went into a team fight and he penta-killed the team fight. Like, I don't know. I mean, yes, some of it was cleanup, but he did a lot of the damage in that fight. And I'm just like, I was just thinking, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this dude has like a Trinity Force and a Spirit Visage. He's 0-3. He's been beaten up all game. I don't remember who he was up against. Might have been Set. And he just came out and just like penta-killed out of nowhere. So I just think he's really good. He doesn't get played in higher elo brackets, I think, because his laning phase can be exploited because he doesn't have any escapes. He can just be camped and killed. But in solo queue, if people leave you alone and you're just allowed to get that 1v1 top lane with Ghost, and you don't get punished for that, you can just completely take over. So I think he's a menace right now. He's very strong. He's always been good at like gold and lower, but I think even in platinum and low diamond, he's starting to become really, really good with the Ghost build. Okay, and a lot of it's because of the Conqueror changes. Okay, Mordekaiser. Speaking of Conqueror changes, Mordekaiser. Now, they did nerf Mordekaiser last patch, and I honestly didn't think it was that big of a deal, but I have not seen him that much, and I think his win rate has dropped off, like, substantially. Yeah, he's at, like, a 49% winner. I think he was at, like, 53 or 54 last patch. Now, he is still getting played in Pro quite a bit. Now, this is on patch 10.1, so this is before that nerf. But he's still going to be a really good AP option top. He can pretty much always force the 1v1 with his ult, so he's really difficult to gank. They did lower, I think, the movement speed or like the slow on his passive. So it is a bit easier for people to get out of it, but you know, he's tanky. He has a good grab. He's pretty close to like AP Darius, right? It's a little bit different because you only force a 1v1 basically, so you can't get those resets. You're just going to kill that one person unless they have a Quicksilver Sash. But it just feels like it's really hard to trade against him. I see a lot of people losing lane against Mordekaiser in the top lane. And he can just be a real menace to deal with later on in the game, especially because he can always, you know, pick someone off and kill them if they don't have a Quicksilver Sash. Because the 650 Realm of Death, like, I know as Rakan, if I try to go in and engage on this guy and he, you know, gets this before I get my W off, then I'm pretty much dead. So it's just really spooky to try to engage onto him because he can always just take you to the Death Realm and kill you if he gets fed. So yeah, he's a real menace, requires unique tools to deal with. You have to have the Quicksilver Sash. It's a 1,300 gold tax, which a lot of times you can't afford unless you're really fed. So yeah, he's still pretty good. I don't think he's as impressive as he was. No, he's still going to be pretty good. Last couple ones here, then we'll end it. Kled, I think, and I honestly, I can't really explain why Kled is doing so well other than potentially the Conqueror changes as well, because that does give him a little bit of sustain, and he has really high AD ratios, I think, on his abilities. I guess it's not that high. I mean, I guess the yank damage... Well, actually, yeah, that's extremely high. Oh my god, I didn't realize Bear Trap on a Rope did that much. 390 damage? With a 180% AD ratio? Oh my lord. What is wrong with that ability? Okay. So Bear Trap on a Rope does 1 billion damage. Good to know. Violent Tendencies. Like, this thing... If you have Titanic Hydra, if you don't know exactly how this works, and I don't remember the exact mechanics, but you can use your Titanic Hydra to reset an auto attack. So if you attack like 3 times really quickly when you get in there, and then on that 3rd attack you get the reset with the Titanic Hydra, I believe the AoE damage off of Hydra I think it applies on hits. So I think it does all of that bonus damage to everybody that Hydra hits if it's the 4th attack. I'm not 100%, don't quote me on that. But I just remember seeing him just like completely blast people on his next 4 basic attacks within 4 seconds after his first. And I've seen him flash too. Like, he'll start off, he'll get like his first 3 attacks on like minions or something, or like 3 attacks on one champion, then he flashes, you know, gets the 3rd attack and then resets with Titanic Hydra and just like one-shots people. Like, he's just got all these really like weird goofy mechanics. Like, this can be cast while he's jousting. He's just a very bizarre champion if you've never played him. And like, reading this is like trying to read a novel as well. Pretty much when he gets dismounted, he gets different abilities which aren't typically as strong, but once he gets his mount back, then he basically heals back to almost full health with his mount. So, you know, there's just all sorts of little games you can play with, like going down low in trades and then figuring out exactly how close you can cut it before you get his mount back. But he just does a ton of damage. You can really outplay people. He's a bizarre champion, so a lot of people, you know, just don't understand exactly what he does. He has huge AD ratios. I think that's got to be a huge thing about it, the Conqueror with the AD ratios. And then he'll just go like Titanic Hydra plus Black Cleaver, and that's pretty much it. I don't remember what he gets after that. It's like Sterix maybe. But overall, he's just going to be a really strong champ. And then he has this macro ability for him and his teammates where he can just kind of engage from like 1,000,000 miles away and run in and start a fight and make a play around the map. So it's kind of like a Pantheon, like old school sort of Pantheon ult, in the sense that you can just sort of show up inside lanes and carry your advantage. So I think he's pretty good. Like I said, I don't understand him fully. I just know that whenever I see a good Kled player, there's a lot of deaths in the top lane, and then he starts taking over later on. So I think he's pretty good. Weird champion, but very good. And then Ornn is the final one that I'll mention. I think he's one of the only viable tanks in the top lane. I don't know if he's getting played at pro. Yeah, he is. Not to great success. 38% win rate so far. But he's solid. He's solid. You know, you against a lot of, as you can see, most of the top lane champions are going to be AD. So I think they get that early Bramble Vest, which helps out a lot. And then you can just stack a bunch of AD. I think I always want to call it Frozen Fist, Iceborne Gauntlet, and it might be Sunfire. Whatever his upgradable items are, you want to make sure you have 2 of those done by the time you're level 12, and you can upgrade them for free. But yeah, there are 2 armor items. I think it might be both Iceborne and the Flame Cloak. But really good team fighting with his ult. Pretty good percentage magic damage. He's up there. I mean, there are other champions that you could pick as well if you don't like Ornn. I just wanted to put like one tank on there if your team like requires a tank. And I do see him like fairly often win matchups against like heavy AD comps, just because you can stack so much armor on 2 of your early completion items. Where are we? Are we still in the jungle? Let's go top lane. So pretty decent win rate. I also think that Yorick can be really strong as well. Yorick is a very good split pushing option. A lot of these champions don't split that well, like Set and Darius in the early game are not the best split pushers. So I do think that Yorick, especially at gold and lower, can be good. But yeah, if you do want the team fight potential, Ornn can be solid. You got to be pretty confident that you're not going to get ganked all the time in the top lane, because Ornn does not have great escapes. He's got a huge hitbox, so he's very easy to hit with skill shots. And, you know, Darius and Set, I believe, will still be able to beat him up with their true damage, especially Darius. I'm not sure about the matchups for sure, but just to say sure a lot. But I think that there are a lot of matchups where he can be pretty successful. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Way longer, as usual, than I planned, but, you know, trying to cover 25 champions with some degree of depth to it. Most of them does take a little bit. So anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.